The most requested legacy faction in terms of making a video about the changes in 1.5 and the new magic and the new match play restrictions, the most requested video that I get has been Dark Elves, and it's not even close. Obviously, Vampire Count's more popular as a faction, but we know what's good in Vampire Counts. It's the same stuff. Maybe I'll do something talking about the, a legacy roundup later, but for now, we're going to talk about Dark Elves. What are we going to talk about here? Well, I'm going to an event this weekend. So what I want to do is I want to start off with the normal, as I'd go through in a 1.5 video where I say, these are the things that have changed. There aren't specific changes for Dark Elves, so that's not something that we're going to cover, but we are going to talk about what the changes are in the game in terms of how the game changing has affected 1.5. I'll write a list for the event that's coming up this weekend, which is a 2.6k list, and it also has it's using the Renegade faction rules. There aren't a huge amount of changes for Renegades in terms of what Dark Elves bring, but there are some changes, so I will be looking at those within the lens of it. But yeah, we're going to look at the changes specifically in 1.5 and how that affects Dark Elves. We'll talk about what I think is good, and then we'll move on to writing the list. Just very quickly, I will run the pre-roll ad for TSN Arena, but I am at the TSN Arena this weekend. There are loads of tournament tickets left. The event is still going on, but it is a smaller, more intimate event at the moment, so it's going to be a lot less people. And if you want to have more of a chat, a chance to talk to me or Rob while we're there, this is a great opportunity to do so. Like I say, plenty of event tickets left. If you've got 2,600 points that you can bring to an event this weekend, link down in the description. It'll be a great time. This video is brought to you by the TSN Arena, the #1 place to go for Old World and Age of Sigmar tournaments here in Nottingham. Rob runs a wide range of events, from 500 point forays all the way up to 2,600 point mega battles, where single models like dragons have a less pronounced effect on the game and you see bigger bricks of infantry. Of course, there's still the normal 2,000 point battles, but even in there's some room for experimentation, with fan favourite events like the river battles going incredibly quickly. The TSN Arena is located on the outskirts of Nottingham City Centre near the Motorpoint Arena, and it is conveniently located in the middle of plenty of parking spots within walking distance of multiple hotels and 2 great places to go for food, including Snenton Market, which has a wide range of options. So, if you're interested in going to a venue where there's plenty of table space, the comfiest chairs that I've been in at any venue, and free drinks all weekend, go to www.tsnarena.com to buy your tickets today. Link in the description. Given that there isn't anything that we can talk about specifically for Dark Elf changes, I haven't gone through, I haven't made a slideshow or anything for this. I think we can just walk through and talk about the changes as we go through. I want to pick out the important parts here and talk about why that changes things. So we're going to start off here with the combat res result. This is a big one for Dark Elves, honestly. Dark Elves were previously their main competitive build. They had 2, and both of them have been hit very hard. So the first one, the one that I played more, was Double Dragon, and I think they were the best Double Dragon elf faction in the game. You could argue that maybe Warriors of Chaos did Double Dragon better, but by the time they got the Warpfire Dragon, that's a really good Double Dragon. But in terms of elves, I think this was the best Double Dragon faction in the game. You can still play that. I think there's maybe a different way to go, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But one of the issues that the Double Dragon has is dragons used to get +1 combat res for being close order and unit strength 5+. Now it's unit strength 10+. So this is a huge nerf in terms of the reliability to the amount of combat res a dragon can bring. And as we all know, it's not necessarily killing your opponent in combat that wins you the combat. It's the amount of combat res you can bring, and rather in terms of dragons, the lack of combat res they can bring, because they are really stymied by the way the game plays now. And that's a good thing. I want to be clear. I'm very pleased about these changes. As someone who was, I guess, abusing dragons, I was using them a lot in my tournament lists. My game plan was park a dragon 1 inch away from you with arcane urgency. What are you going to do about it? That doesn't work anymore, and I'm very pleased about it. Dragons still work, you've just got to be a little bit smarter about how you use them, and I think that's really good for the overall health of the game. So, combat res result, you don't get the +1 combat res just for existing that you did previously. Big change here. Also, we combo that, and it's not on the screen here, but if we combo that with the way that the challenge changes has worked, previously, in a challenge, you would just do all of your overkill. Now, if you kill your opponent in a challenge, say, I've got a dragon, a dreadlord on a dragon, I go into a challenge, I get there, I hit them, kill them with my great weapon at initiative 6, because I've got a great weapon, I've got strikes first as well, so I'm striking at initiative 6. Okay, cool. Great weapon attacks, I do 2 wounds, 1 wound, 1 overkill. That's it. I stop making attacks at that initiative step. I don't get to move to initiative 4. I don't get to move to the stomp attacks as well. So really stymied in terms of the amount of output you can bring with a dragon into a unit champion challenge, which is fine, but it means that you have to play the faction differently. So big change here for the combat res result and just the challenges as well. The second big nerf, I'm really pleased that they're at the start here. We're going to talk about magical vortexes. The other way that you could play with Dark Elves, and you could combine the two, and you could still do this with double dragons, was to really use and abuse Pillar of Fire, because there's an item called a Focus Familiar, where you would cast your spell from an additional 12 inches forwards, or, you know, from a point within 12 inches. So it let you get around vision arcs and stuff like that with dragons, but it basically meant that you could cast a Pillar of Fire 24 inches, be out of dispel range for your opponent, and then turn one, if you go first, which you could very easily set up your army to be more likely to go first, just bounce that Pillar of Fire through their lines quite consistently, and it was not a fun thing to play against, so I'm very pleased to see that go away. But that's the second big nerf that we've seen to Dark Elves here. So vortexes, not only can you cast Dispel from where the vortex is, Pillar of Fire has also been nerfed from choosing the direction it goes to, but also now it goes in a random direction and it can stay still. So a really big downside there. Oh, also, magical vortexes, instead of going just through in a straight line, once it moves its movement, so let's say you roll the Pillar of Fire through an enemy unit, you roll 5 inches, it moves 5 inches, it doesn't then just continue in a straight line, it just goes the shortest distance out of the unit. So a really big nerf to that playstyle, and I would say that playstyle is completely dead now. It doesn't work at all. So we've got to think about something else that we can do in terms of what we bring as a Dark Elf player. Casting spells, you've been nerfed, so you can only cast a number of spells equal to your level of wizardry. This is fine, this doesn't hit us. It's very rare that you want to be casting more than 3 or 4 spells with a Dark Elf wizard at any point anyway. And now you only get +2, you get half of your level rounding up to your casting bonus. So this means that you're not casting at +4, you're only casting at +2 with a level 3 wizard, and often you're going to be going for a level 3 wizard. Or if you want to go for a level 4 wizard, you can do, and that is useful if you're going for the Spell Familiar, or I've forgotten the name of it, the 15-point item that gives you +1 spell known. You can still have, if you wanted to, 1 wizard with a Lore Familiar and 1 wizard level 4 that knows 5 spells, but that's less good than it was previously. Barely controlled power, this is not really a change that affects us. You were only really running 1 wizard, or maybe you're running 2, but it's not the standard now. 8 to 9, it used to be all of your wizards couldn't cast if you miscast and you rolled an 8 or a 9 on the table. Now it is just this single wizard doesn't, so it doesn't really make a difference here. And then we can see some other stuff where it's just a case of, you know, it's the same as the casting changes. Dispelling remains in play spells. This is another nerf to remains in play, whereas you can't just drop a vortex spell on top of your opponent and be out of their dispel range. Now it's easier for them to get rid of, and I think this is good for the game as well. Anyone who's played against Column of Crystal or you know, any of those high casting value spells that are so hard to get rid of, especially with the nerfing to, you know, you only dispel at +2 now. So if there's a vortex spell that casts on a 10 or 11, you're still very unlikely to get it off. So this is a good change. Ward save clarifications, fighting rank, here we go. This is something that we need to be aware of for Dark Elves, and we're not really going to make much use of it in terms of the things that I think are particularly good. There is some level of this, but now we have... so there's a lot of rules that sort of overlap. The first one here, fighting rank, is now... you can only attack if you're within your movement distance of an enemy unit. That doesn't affect us. We weren't going to be spending, you know, going 20 models wide or anything like that. So not a real difference here, but just be aware of it in terms of if you're sending your small footprint units into enemies. Supporting attacks can do so, you know, this is again, you've got to be within movement distance. So spears are nerfed a little bit, but spears really aren't where we want to be with infantry. And then charging units, this is just clarifying how initiative works. No big change there. Going through fly, you overrun on the ground. This means that you can't do shenanigans with your dragons and overruns. This is fine. Frenzy is worse. We don't have a huge amount of frenzy. Sorry, Witch Elves, I don't consider you to be real. Frenzy is now only on the turn you charge, so it is a real nerf to something like Witch Elves, which was already struggling. And Impetuous here, I don't think we've got any access to Impetuous. We have Stupidity, which is worse. Speaking of, if we scroll down here, stupidity is much worse than it was. Previously it was bad, now it's really bad. So unless you're fleeing or in combat, you test against your leadership test, your leadership characteristic. You can't move, can't shoot or cast spells, can't dispel, and you must hold. Because you can't move, if you lose combat with a unit that has failed stupidity, I think if you were to fall back in good order, you would just stay where you are because you automatically rally at the end of the movement. So that's not a problem. But if you were to flee, you would just be automatically caught if your opponent rolls even a 1 on the d6 or the 2d6, which is impossible not to do. So if you were going to flee and break from combat, you're just going to die. Whereas I guess if you fall back in good order, you are pseudo unbreakable, which is fine, I guess. You're also not able to score if you're stupid, but don't worry, our stupid units don't come in core anyway, so it's not really a downside. What else have we got? Vanguard, can't Vanguard and charge, not an issue for us. A lot of the stuff in here isn't really big. There's some clarifications for skirmish in combat where, you know, we have some good skirmishes, some of our best units in skirmish. Now, if you are charged in the flank, you don't count as being charged in the flank because you're a skirmisher. You don't have a front or a flank or a rear. Some clarifications there. Onto the regular infantry changes. And I think these are actually moderately meaningful, and I think there are some core infantry that I'm vaguely interested in playing for Dark Elves, so we'll talk about those. Basically, there's 3 rules here that apply to regular and heavy infantry. You know about them already, but we're going to talk about them in terms of what this brings to Dark Elves. Press a battle. You fight in 2 ranks. As long as you haven't charged, you have 2 ranks worth of attacks. This is fine. Your elves with strength 3, you're probably not going to get that much off. But it does mean that spears do get a little bit worse. Then we combo that with parry, which is if you've got a sword and shield, so specifically hand weapon and shield, you get an additional +1 to your armor save in combat to a maximum of 3 up. This is really good for us. You can take Dark Elf warriors who are super cheap. You don't have to pay the extra point for spear, so they're a point cheaper than spearmen, and you know, high elf spearmen. You can go for, I think it's 8 points per model, and you have a 4 up armor save in combat, which is respectable. It's not great, but it is still, it brings value in the way that I see the game to be played. And then finally, we've got Master Infantry, which is you get +1 combat res if you are higher unit strength than the enemy, and also you are an infantry unit. So really good stuff here. In terms of the big issue that infantry had pre 1.5, where we're looking at, say, for example, dragons just going into the front of them, the dragon would hit you, do 1 wound in the challenge, it would do 5 wounds of overkill, it would have combat res. The dragon would be sat at 7 combat res, and most enemy, you know, infantry units couldn't hit that without a battle standard bearer and a magic banner. And that's a lot of commitment. You know, that's more than you want to put into a unit. Whereas now, if we've got, say, for example, 20 ranked up Dark Elf infantry, we're going to be bringing into that, you know, dragon. They will only get, you know, 1 or 2 points of combat res because of the way challenges have changed. But we're going to be bringing 2 ranks. We're going to be bringing a standard. We're going to be bringing close order, infantry outnumber, and then... Is there anything else? Have I forgotten something? Rank, banner, close order, infantry outnumber. Sure, we're bringing 5. But bringing 5 against, you know, 2 or 3 of an enemy dragon, we're going to be winning. We're going to be double outnumbering. That's just good enough to get you there, which is really good. And also, because of the parry save, you're going to be taking theoretically less wounds as well, because you'll actually get a save against the important attacks. So really big changes here, and it does make a difference in terms of what we bring. I will say our core infantry is not great. It's okay. It's worth considering, and I think there's a couple of things that we can do here. And warriors and crossbow, you know, are they called crossbowmen? I feel like they've got a funny name. Anyway, those 2 units in core are the ones that I'm more interested in bringing. But we do have to think about what our opponent's going to be bringing. Our opponents are going to be bringing bricks of infantry as well that we're going to have to break. So that's something that we've got to consider, and first charge is really important to think about there. Other than that, you can change weapons. Oh, that's war machines. There's a different weapons of war rule. There we go. More than 1 combat weapon. You can change which weapon you have. This is where actually taking spears on your Dark Elf warriors has some validity. I don't hate doing it. It is a pointer model that I'm not interested in spending personally, but if you want to do it, you can do. The reason for this, you're initiative 4 because you're an elf. You have elven reflexes, which gives you +1 initiative on the first round of combat, and thrusting spears give you +1 initiative if you are charged. So on the first round of combat, if you're charged, you're going to be attacking with theoretically 3 ranks, because you've got 2 fighting ranks and then the supporting attack ranks from the spears as well. You're going to be initiative 6, so you're going to be matching your opponent. The problem is it's going to be strength 3 AP 0 attacks with no rerolls or anything like that, so it's not great, But if you want to stimmy, you know, enemy light cavalry charges, for example, if someone's charging you with Marauder Horsemen or something like that, you can hit them at the same time. I maybe would just not pay the point and take the extra save, but there is at least a discussion to be had there about whether it's worth putting spears, or if your warriors have spears already, which a lot of them probably do, you know, you're doing all right there. It's not an active downside to have paid that point. There is still a use case for taking spears, and having more than one combat weapon, being able to decide to swap between and next turn get the parry save is really important. There are some changes to weapons here, none of which I think are super impactful. The halberds that the Dark Elves have specifically are different ones and they don't get this buff, so nothing changes there. Oh, lances, you can only get the lance bonus against the unit that you charged. So for example, if we're talking Dark Elf Cold One Knights, if you charge into a unit or you overrun a unit and hit them and then something else charges you in the front, you don't get to use your lances against the unit that charged you. Just some common sense stuff there that has been changed. Maximum armor value. This is really big. You can only get to a 2-up save if you're infantry or cavalry. Chariots, monsters, war machines can never get above a 3-up save. And this is a really big nerf in terms of what we can bring. But really, you weren't playing around with a 2-up armor save on your dragon outside of enemy shooting. And the thing that people would bring for you, which is the Night Goblin poison shooting, that's dead now, so we don't have to worry about massed AP0 shooting or massed AP1 shooting. So having that 2-up armor save is way less important. And now just having a 3-up save and a 4-up ward save, that's really good on something as beefy as a dragon, and that still presents problems. So this is a change that, on the face of it, looks bad for us. I think is actually good for us because our dragons weren't getting to a 2-up save, you know, particularly easily. You can run them with a 3-up save or a 4-up save, depending on whether you use that shield and full plate, and just lean on the ward save and lean on the toughness 6 and the high number of wounds, and then bring some output there as well. So I think this is, on the face of it, a nerf, but realistically it's a buff comparatively for Dark Elves to other factions, and also infantry and cavalry can still have a 2-up save. We've got some of the best heavy cavalry in the game. They do have stupidity. That does suck. But it's still really, really good. I think I'm happy to play around with just, you know, I will accept, you know, I'll just deal with it. I'm going to put up with the fact that my Cold One Knights are stupid because they bring such a high amount of output, and now that we're not doing the Pillar of Fire shenanigans, you can bring buffs to them with Demonology or Dark Magic that I think are very interesting, and we're going to look at that in the list building. Other than that, it's a lot of changes here to spells, which we're not going to go into, and then there's some FAQs as well. So I think that basically covers the main thrust of the changes for Dark Elves. So let's have a look at the PDF and what sort of things that we're looking at in terms of, you know, the units that are exciting still for Dark Elves. Just to quickly walk through what you might look at in terms of the restrictions, I think these restrictions are fine. You can play around with this and not feel too limited as a Dark Elf player. Some factions have, you know, restrictive army composition lists. This one feels pretty okay. 0-1 Dreadlord or Supreme Sorceress per 1,000 points. That's fine. I would like to be able to take 2 Wizards or 2 Dreadlords and also one of the others, but it's not the end of the world that you can't, because you do also have here the High Beastmaster, which is a good halfway character for those, and also your level 2 Wizards are fine. Dark Masters are decent as well. That's our BSB, just our sort of hero level BSB. Weapon skill 6, 3 attacks, can ride a cold one, getting up to toughness 4. Just a decent stat line to start off with, and then there are obviously Death Hags, Canite Assassins, and the Cauldron of Blood, which I am not going to talk about here, but I believe if you run them in Renegades, they are maybe worth running. In terms of, you can put them inside of the units of Death Hags and you can do some shenanigans there. It's outside of the realm of what I'm looking at. I'm more looking at this as holistically as a faction, and then also I've got to write a list for a Renegades event. But if you only play Renegades, I think that is something that's worth digging into that I haven't personally got interest in. In core, we've got Warriors, Repeater Crossbowmen, Black Orc Corsairs, and Death Riders. 3 of those 4, I think, now are good. I'm going to have, I'll be honest, I haven't re-looked at Corsairs. I think they're probably terrible. We're going to have a look at them now, but, you know, the other 3 I think are all very playable. And then you've got 0-1 Witch Elves as core if you've got a Death Hag. Again, you can do this if you like to do it. This is outside of the way that I think Dark Elves should play, but I think I might have a bias here, so I'm going to just make that bias clear. And if you like them, continue to play them and hopefully do well with them. Special is where it starts to fall through. So the Executioners are an okay infantry unit, but they're not scoring, so I personally don't want to use them. Witch Elves we've talked about. Shades, if you could take 0 to 1 unit of Shades and Core, I would be very interested in putting Shades in. They're, you know, skirmishing, they've got loads of rules, they've got evasive, they've got fire and flee, they've got a better ballistic skill. I just don't think they bring enough in terms of, they don't bring enough damage to be taking them outside of scoring skirmishing core, so I will leave them on the board, on the shelf. Sorry, Harpies are good though. You know, having a small skirmishing unit of very fast infantry is something that I value. Blackguard, again, decent infantry, suffers from not being a core scoring unit as well. 0 to 1 unit of Cold 1 Knights per 1,000 points. These things are gangbusters. We're going to be playing around with them. I'm like, at 2,000 points, at least one unit. At 2,600 points, I'm putting a second unit in. I own like 15 of them. I'm going to be running all 15 if I can. We're going to see if we can make that work. Scourge Runner Chariots and Cold 1 Chariots per 1,000 points. Again, if we could see Scourge Runner Chariots in core, I would be interested in doing so, especially if you could take them in units the way that you can take Tyrannok units. But here, they're fine. I think you can run them as pseudo fire support if you wanted to go heavy into some Reaper Bolt Throwers and Scourge Runner Chariots, but I'm probably not doing that here. Cold One Chariots are interesting. I've been playing them in some training games. I've been playing with a friend, and they feel fine. You know, they're heavy chariots. They feel okay, but they're not. I'm not excited by them. And then we've got War Hydras and Charybdis, both of which I think, unfortunately, still just suffer from being very expensive for what they do and not being that tanky. Into rare, we've got upgraded Witch Elves, Witch Elf adjacent shrines, Hydras, Charybdis, and Medusas. Now, Medusas do have a place, and we'll talk about them specifically. The rest of these, I think, are competitively specifically relatively unplayable. If you're trying to, you know, you're bringing a faction that is already below par. If you're trying to swing against some of the better factions, Bretonnians, or, you know, the Undead, or Warriors of Chaos, taking these units are going to make it more difficult for you. If you like them, do it, but just be aware that you're making, you know, less competitive choices, and, you know, there's a time and a place for that, but just be aware that you're not putting them into your list to make the list better. And then we've got the Blood Rack Medusa, which I think is actually kind of interesting and a good anti-undead piece, so we'll talk about that one. And this is a relatively new tech piece that I've been only thinking about for the last couple of months. Doomfire Warlocks, they were not on my radar before. They are now actually a lot more useful in my mind. The fact that they don't do anything apart from cast spells is upsetting, but I will probably be putting 1 to 2 units of these in, probably leaning towards 1 unit of them. Finally, we've got the Reaper Bolt Throwers as well, and these just suffer the problem of, you know, Elf Bolt Throwers. They're super squishy, they don't do enough output, but also I can see worse uses for points. I think I'm coming around on Reaper Bolt Throwers as being more useful, especially now that we're seeing more ranked up infantry. I feel there is more use for that sort of unit. So a quick run through on the nobles. What do I see their use being? Well, I still really like putting them on a dragon. If we go down to page 8 here, we can see that if you put them on a dragon, it's like 285 points. It's like page 18. It's like one of those choose your own adventure books. We've got the dragon here, 280 points, gets us to T6, gives us 9 wounds, weapon skill 6, strength 7, 6 attacks, and D6 stomps. This is your standard dragon loadout. I think it's still very good. It's fly 10, it's very tanky, it's got terror, it's swift stride. It's going to do pretty well for you. It's going to be one of the big workhorses in your army. But you have to support it. This can't run around on its own in the way that it would previously. So you have to bring things like either Dark Riders with unit champions or another character that's going to look to soak challenges. And we'll talk about that when we get to the Beastmaster, because I think that's a really solid thing that we can do. So if we go back to the Lord, what sort of restrictions are we looking at? Well, we've got a good weapon skill, our strength's mediocre, our attacks are mediocre, our initiative's good, which is a downside now, and we've got strikes first, which is a downside, because ideally what you'd like to do is have the dragon hit in the challenge. So if you're in a challenge against a unit champion and you want to do as many wounds as possible, you'd rather take the black dragon's 6 attacks at strength 7 AP2 than the noble's 4 attacks at strength 6 AP2. It's just, you know, it's going to do, you throw more dice at the problem, you're probably going to do better. But unfortunately, you have strikes first, which means even with a great weapon, you're striking at initiative 6 and the dragon is striking at initiative 4. That's not going to work. So what are we thinking in terms of equipping our nobles with on a dragon? Well, Spell Interact is the #1 thing to go for, giving it magic resist 2. I think that's really solid. And also, we don't have to spend a lot of points on defensive items. So Spell Interact for me is where I'm probably looking at. Or if you want to go for something else, you can spend points on weapons. If we just have a quick trip down to the magic weapons here, there's not really anything that's super exciting. Executioner's Axe is fine. It's not a bad item. You always wound on a 2. You've got Killing Blow and your AP 2. That's okay. I don't think, given that it's got Killing Blow and it doesn't have Monster Slayer, if you're going into an infantry character, if that infantry character is not immune to Killing Blow, you're probably going to kill it with a dragon anyway. Specifically, the things that are coming and are able to tank dragons, like, you know, for example, a Dwarf Lord who is kitted up to the 9s and is going to sit in a challenge. That's not going to die to Killing Blow. It might not die to the dragon. So you've got to just think about what you put it into. And I don't think this is worth the 70 points on a Dreadlord on dragon specifically. Sword of Ruin is fine. It's strength user and it's 65 points, which means we can't combine it with the best item in the book, which we'll get to in a second. If you could, it would be okay. Turning off all saves is really strong. The fact that you are only strength 4 is a downside. You'd probably want to buff it with, you know, making you stronger or making them weaker. But, you know, there is some play here. And then we've got a Beastmaster item only, which is not good. And we've got an expensive magic, you know, repeater crossbow, which is okay. This is, for 35 points, this is an okay item. It's just, it's not what we're looking at doing with our characters. Speaking of the best item in the book, Pendant of Caleth, 40 points. This is like the Bretonian Vow, but better. So you always get a 5-up ward save, and then you get a 4-up ward save against a strength 5 or higher attack. So this is what I would recommend putting on your Dreadlord, and, you know, everything else is kind of whatever. I could see you putting this, you know, the Pendant of Caleth for the really good ward save, shield, full plate, great weapon or lance. That's it. That I'd be happy with that. I'm also going to spend the points probably and put some magic resist on there, and an easy way to do it is going for the, I've forgotten the name of it already, Spell Interact for that magic resist too. The weapon's not great, but whatever. The dragon's going to do the heavy lifting. Master BSB, there's a couple of good banners here that we can go for. We can talk about those later if they come up. But Master's fine. I think you could use it as a bit of a force multiplier for Cold One Knights if you wanted to go down that route. Or we can go again to page 8 and have a look at the Chariot, which is the Cold One Chariot. Now, there are inherent issues with the Cold One Chariot in that you're putting stupidity on your expensive characters, but it's not bad. It's a T5 Chariot, which T5 for elves is very high, and then you've got 4 wounds as well. So this could be something that you use as a supportive piece for your dragon. You could have a Cold One Chariot character. It's really slow. It doesn't have Swift Stride and it only moves 7 inches. So it's not a good use of that, but it's something you could do. You could put a Beastmaster on a Scourge running a Chariot. That's fine as well. But if you wanted to go for a Chariot build, like a BSB Chariot build, I think on a Cold One Chariot would work quite well. It's got a decent amount of punch. You can get some combat res on there as well with the standard Battle Standard Bearer and the War Banner. You go for full plate and shield, so you've got that 3-up armor save, give it a ward save in some way. I think that's an okay build. It's not something that I'm looking to spend my points on, but it's not bad. Sea Dragon Cloak, obviously, giving you +1 save against non-magical shooting attacks. Less useful now, because you could just take full plate and a shield, and that gets you to a 3-up armor save. Other than that, not much to talk about. Sorceresses, it's a wizard. We have the Hecarate's Blessing, which is a once per game reroll a failed cast, not a miscast. This is good. It's not as good as High Elves, who have every turn, but it is still pretty good. And then we've got a good sweep of laws here, or a good suite of laws. I think all of these have place. And just to very quickly rattle off what I see the use of them, if you want to run this with some Dark Riders and, you know, have a little bit of a buff to the Dark Rider output in terms of going for Curse of Arrow Attraction, but mostly you're looking for Fireball, you're going to take a Ruby Ring of Ruin, and you're just looking to pick away at your opponent's skirmishing units, Battle Magic does that best. Demonology, if you want to put this on a Cold One and join a unit of Cold One Knights, which is probably what I'm going to be looking at doing, this is a really good way of doing it. You're going to buff them up with extra attacks, AP, and strength on the Demonic Vessel or Demonic Vigor, and then you can give them plus toughness and plus movement as well, so, you know, getting around some of their weaknesses there. Just a really good lore if you want to really just turn that unit that has some punch into a unit that will just absolutely crush Graveguard. This is how you do it. Dark Magic is a similar vein, but you don't have to be in the unit, so you're going to Word of Pain enemy units to hex them -1 strength and toughness, and you're going to give yourself Battle Lust, re-rolling hits with Hatred, giving yourself extra attacks from Frenzy. It's fine. I think there's a better way of doing that, so we'll talk about that later on, but Dark Magic is okay. Elementalism, if you want to go heavy on the shooting, if you're going a lot of crossbows, if you're going a lot of Dark Riders, if you're maybe going Shades, if your main output is going to be repeater crossbows, this is really good. I don't think the repeater crossbow build works. I don't think there's enough output there to make it worthwhile, but that is something to consider. You know, if you want to go down that route, elementalism's the way to do it. And then illusion is if you want a control piece, so you want to Miasmic Mirage enemy units, or you want to Column of Crystal them, anything like that, that's the main way that you can do so. It's a really strong tool for playing around with that. Or if you want to go for Spectral Doppelganger memes, if you really want to kill Infantry, you can go Executioner's Axe Lore Familiar on a Sorceress and just send her at Infantry and, you know, hope that she doesn't die before the Strike Last attacks come through. That's, you know, that's there. That's an option. I think I like Demonology or Battle Magic the most in terms of the way that we're probably going to be building. So we'll look at that more when we get to the actual list building. High Beastmasters, this is what I wanted to talk about. So, Weapon Skill 7, which is a really strong defensive ability, only Toughness 3, but you have got 3 wounds, which on a 75-point character is pretty wild. Leadership 9 is good as well, which is gonna matter. 3 attacks is okay, but you can't take any good weapons. You can have a whip, which is bad because you've got strikes first, it has no other rules. Or you can take a cavalry spear, which is bad because it's +1 strength, +1 AP. So you're going to be strength 5, AP 1. That's not super exciting for, you know, a character, but I guess it's pretty cheap. You can do that. You also can't take full plate, so you can only take shield and heavy armor, which is definitely a downside compared to where you might be with other characters, but there's ways around that as well. Finally, you can take the Scourge Runner Chariot, which is okay, and you can take the Manticore, which is really good. Which is quite good. It does require you to take a combination of magic items to make it feel worth taking, but let's have a look at that one. There are some rules on here as well that are worth talking about before we do. 75 points of magic items, fantastic. It really enables us to have quite a good tanky character. And then also we've got Goad Beast, which is in your command phase, goad a single friendly model, which is a monster, within your command range. Doesn't have to be in your vision arc, which is very important for what we'll talk about in a second, and that model gets plus D3 modifier to its attacks. I would quite like to have D3 modifier on my dragon attacks. You know, 7 to 9 attacks is definitely better than 6, so I do like this, and you've got a good leadership to be able to take that test on. So let's go and have a look at what that actually means in terms of the Manticore, because that's what I'm thinking about putting it on. Manticore, first of all, has Willful Beast. This is the downside of it. You take a leadership test using your own leadership, which you don't have a leadership because you're ridden by the Beastmaster, so leadership 9. If it's passed, the rider keeps control, and if it's failed, you get Frenzy. It's the mount specifically, not the rider, and that's fine because here the mount is the thing that does the heavy lifting. Honestly, I think this is okay. Leadership 9 to not be frenzied, it's like better impetuous, I would say. So I'm okay with this. This feels pretty okay. You've also got Strength 5, AP2, which is not super exciting, but it's fine for a mid-level mount. And also the Venomous Tail. This is similar to a Wyvern, but you don't have to spend the points to give it the Venomous Tail, which means you don't have the risk of going into a challenge accidentally killing the enemy, with your strike's first attack, which is a downside. So you don't have to have that there, and you can just make all 4 of your attacks with the better profile, the Wicked Claws. So that's good stuff there. It's Flying 9. It's Stomp Attacks D3, Swift Stride, Terror, all of the stuff you'd expect to see on sort of like a mid-level mount character. And Weapon Skill 5 is okay. Strength 5 is okay. Toughness +1 is where it falls down. This means that you're only T4, and that's actively bad. That does suck. In the Renegades pack, it's Toughness +2, which is nice. You get to T5, which puts you in line with a Griffin. But +4 wounds is quite good as well. So our characters are going to be getting up to 7 wounds. Our Beastmaster's 7 wounds, which for, at base, 205 points is not too shabby for having your supportive character that's going to be running around with the dragon tanking the challenges and potentially going off and killing some light units on its own in the late game. So I think this is a pretty good stat line, and it's something that I've resisted for a long time, but once we've got into 1.5, I think there's a lot of reasons to take it. How do we make this not terrible? Well, we do a combination of two magic items. One is Talisman of Protection, because you've got to have a ward save. You know, we're going to be rocking Heavy Armor, Shield, and then also Sea Dragon Cloak. So we've got a 4-up save in combat, or a 3-up save against non-magical shooting, which is okay. It's not too bad. And then we're also going to be rocking a 5-up ward save, which is just enough to make, you know, take the edge off. Things aren't going to immediately one-shot you. We're also going to take the Shield of Grond. This is a 40-point shield, and it means all attacks incoming are -1 strength. And that puts us at pseudo T5, or in Renegades, pseudo T6. We're still toughness 4, but because the strength of the attacks coming in is 1 less, they're going to be, you know, wounding us at 1 less a lot of the time. If you're hit by cannonballs, you're still going to be wounded on 2s, you know, but you were going to be wounded on 2s if you're on a dragon, so whatever. All of the meaningful attacks that are coming at you are going to be worse. So in the regular pack, you know, the legacy factions, you're T4 and you're against great weapons. Instead of them wounding you on 2s, they're wounding you on 3s because they become strength 5 and you're T4. This is a really good shield. You can put this on the Black Dragon Dreadlord as well. I don't like it because it's a bit of a nombo in that you're making them wound you, you know, -1 strength, which is worse, but then also your ward save potentially gets worse. There is an argument that you could just say, yes, but it's worth it in that you become basically impregnable. Anything that is higher strength than you is or, you know, sorry, anything that is strength 5 becoming strength 4 wounds you on 6s on the dragon, and that is true, but I'd like to just spread my defensive buffs out. It's a little unfortunate that it's a minimum of 1 on the strength characteristic, because otherwise it would stop Viletide, but, you know, we can't have everything here. I'm not going to go through all of the units, but I am going to talk about the ones that I think maybe have a bit of a glow up, and the K-Knight Assassin is something that's worth considering. It doesn't fit into my lists. I am capped on character points. But there is a world I could see you wanting to put something like this in, because the way that it works is it's hidden within Dark Elf Infantry. Previously, we weren't running a lot of that. Now we might be. So this gives you a little bit of a defense against enemy units charging your repeater crossbowmen. For example, if you've got 2 units of those, you can take 1 assassin, put it in one of the units, and your opponent's got a bit of a mind game as to, oh, do I want to charge my sort of, you know, light cavalry into the crossbows, the sort of thing that might beat them, but now is actually at risk. You're a weapon skill 8 character, strength 4, 3 attacks. You're super squishy, but you're a very high initiative, and you have strikes first. You have eternal hatred and hatred all enemies, so you're going to be hitting with those attacks. You can only get 50 points of magic weapons, so you can't go for like an ogre blade or something, unfortunately. But what you can do is give them one of the poisons, so you can realistically give them dark venom. That's what I'd be recommending going for here, and you can try and snipe out some enemy characters with your assassin here, which is exactly what you'd expect to do. You'll be hitting them on 3s, re-rolling, you'll be striking first, you'll be wounding them, you know, you're just fishing for 6s, and I think that's an interesting way to build. Obviously, you're going for an additional hand weapon with killing blows, so you've got 2, you know, an additional attack there. I don't know that this makes it into many lists, but if you want to run sort of more fluffy, flavorful infantry lists, this has definitely got a place in it, so consider looking at the assassins. Then we have got the City Guard. Yes, so we've got warriors and repeater crossbowmen. Both of these units, I think, are better than they would, you know, you might expect them to be. An 8-point elf with weapon skill 4, only toughness 3, you know, initiative 4, strikes, you know, elven reflexes, all that stuff. But they come with shields as well. That's just an okay unit for standing on objectives. I'm not excited about it, but I can see taking a brick of these and maybe putting some character support in there, whether it is a battle magic wizard to give them Oaken Shield and Arcane Urgency, you know, or whatever route you want to go down, like a BSB in there as well. I think they can do the mid-sized, not Death Star, but like combat res brick that stands on objectives okay. At 8 points a model, they're pricey, but it's only 240 points for 30 of them. That's not too bad. You can put some stuff in there. You can take a magic banner up to 50 points. You can give them veteran. There's a lot of stuff in there that I think is quite good. More excitingly for me are the repeater crossbowmen, because they start with light armor. You can give them shields for points, so up to 12 points per model. And repeater crossbows are just okay. It gives you a unit that can stand on an off objective and still do something, which I really like. So I think repeater crossbows with their ballistic skill 4, not bad. It gives you something to do. I think units of 14, maybe 2 ranks of 7, I'm looking at putting in to be my holding off objective units. Corsairs, I did say that I hadn't looked at them. Let's give them a fair shake. Okay, they don't have shields, so already this is not a unit I'm happy with. Come in 10 plus, whereas here you have to take, oh no, you have to take 10 plus there as well. Corsairs, they come with light armor. They have to take one of the two, so you probably take repeater handbows. They have move through cover, open order, sea dragon cloak. So they're as tanky as these units up here against shooting, because against non-magical shooting, because they've got light armor and +1 for the sea dragon cloaks. Yeah, I just don't see a use for them. If you've got them, run them as repeater crossbowmen, maybe. That's probably what I'll do. Blackguard, Dread Halberds are really sad in that they don't get the additional AP on charge that you would have got if you were, you know, running normal halberds, which is a shame. But you can make supporting attacks during a turn you charged, which is nice, so you still get to fight in 2 ranks. There are upsides and downsides. These are fine, they're just a bit expensive. They come with full plate, which is less valuable than it was, because now light armor and a shield is the equivalent of full plate in combat. Yeah, they're okay. They're okay. They can have 100 points of magic standards, which if there were any standards that were expensive that you wanted to take would be valuable. But these suffer from being Phoenix Guard. They are Phoenix Guard, but evil, and Phoenix Guard, but good, aren't very good. So similar here for the Executioners, just the same stuff. They've got strikes first. Sorry, they don't have strikes last. They don't have strikes first. They've got initiative 6, so these are sword masters, but evil. Great. Again, they're not a scoring unit. They're only AP1. You've got to put the Banner of Hageneth on there. I think this unit really struggles. Shades, I think, are worth looking at for the ballistic skill 5 with the repeater crossbows. You can give them great weapons. I think it's too expensive too. But there is a world that you take these and try and go quite heavy on repeater crossbow shooting. I think that's fine. Giving them ambushes is not bad. I don't love ambushes, but having lower number of drops flexibly is okay. And when you're going from 15 to 16 points, that 1 pointer model is not super impactful. They've got good rules. They've got evasive. Sorry, I thought they had fire and flee. I said that earlier. I was talking out my backside. Scouts and skirmishes. I like having a unit that can scout. You know, being able to aggressively position to screen out a Green Knight is still something I think is valuable. So I can see them making it into lists. I'm not even going to talk about Witch Elves. My feelings on Witch Elves are frequently brought up on this channel. Harpies, these are a decent skirmishing unit. They're very, very fast. They fly 10, they have move through cover, they scout, they skirmish, they swift stride. They're 11 points a model. They have 2 attacks each. Those attacks are strength 3 with no AP, but they're not bad. This is the sort of unit that I would be looking to put in for a multi-purpose. You know, just put 6 or 7 of them in. They can go and harass war machines. They can scout to, you know, stand in the terrain, as I've mentioned 6 times now for the Green Knight. They're just a very versatile unit, and I think you're not wrong to put them in. And they're also an infantry unit that you don't worry about getting to 10 models. They're never going to score. They're not core. You just take them to be a harassing unit, so they work here. Let's talk about Dark Riders first. Dark Riders, I think, are still probably the best core for Dark Elves. They're very fast. You probably want to take them in either, like, I've been looking at either 4 units of 6 or 3 units of 8. I think I like 3 units of 8 more because that gives you unit strength 16, which means that you have to take 4 models worth of wounds before you get to a point where you can't score. They are light armor. You give them shields as well. They've got repeater crossbows. They're just a very versatile unit that won't do a lot, but it'll sit at the edges of the board. It can stand on objectives and score. It'll pick off enemy models here and there. They're not bad on the charge. You've got the cavalry spears built in. They're relatively tanky with a 5-up save. They've got great rules in that they've got skirmishers built in, swift stride built in. You can buy fire and flee, and you can buy scouts. Just a good core unit. I think this is your workhorse, even if you're still taking repeater crossbowmen. And then we'll move on to the 2 other cav units, which are the interesting ones. And that's probably where we'll end it for looking through the units here, because we've kind of covered all of the good stuff. Cold One Knights absolutely slap, and there's a great combination that we're going to put into our list in a moment. So starting off, we've got movement 7, which is slow, and we don't have counter charge. So that's a real downside. We also have stupidity. That's a real downside. So there's 2 big hits against Cold One Knights. It says a lot for how good they are that I still think they're worth running without countercharge and with stupidity. So some games you're going to lose just because your Cold One Knights get caught. Some games you're going to win because these things will absolutely slap. So on top, you've got a weapon skill 5 Knight with a single attack. Good initiative, all the stuff you'd expect to see. We've got fear, which is really nice because it means we don't have to take terror tests. You know, if you're charging into enemy ranked up skeletons, you don't have to take a fear test. All of this stuff is fantastic. You're going to outnumber terror causes, so they won't make you cause fear, just to clarify before someone says in the comments. They're also a unit that get to a 2-up armor save. You've got the heavy armor shields. You upgrade the heavy armor to full play every day of the week, so you've got a 3-up save with the heavy armor shield. You've got the armored hide for a 2-up save. Really solid there. First charge, one of the only things in the book that has first charge. You can get rid of enemy rank bonuses, which if you're dealing with infantry Death Stars is going to be very important for trying to crack them. This is also really good because if you're talking about warband units, a lot of infantry that are going to be quite cheap, you know, if we're talking Yeoman Guard, for example, they've got a poor leadership, but they've got Warband and Horde. They get up to leadership 9. If you get rid of their rank bonus with first charge, they also lose it for combat. So they don't get to, you know, make a leadership test on leadership 9. Suddenly they're making it on leadership 6. That's significantly worse. This is a unit that can absolutely crack infantry Death Stars for multiple reasons. One of them being getting rid of, you know, first charge. They've got Armor Bane on the Cold One. The cold ones themselves, which is nice because they've got 2 attacks at strength 4, which is really solid. Again, we've got T4 elves, we've got strength 4 elves. This is a really big break point in terms of what you bring. I could sing their praises all day, but I'm not going to because you'll get bored. You'll get bored before me. I'm just going to talk about what is good in them, and let's bring up as well. I think we've gone through all the rules here. Yeah, you can have 50 points of magic items on the Dread Knight. That means we can put magic resist 2 on this unit, just on the unit champion. I will be doing that. Obsidian Lodestone's really strong. You can also take a magic standard as well. So let's have a look at specifically the magic standard that makes them tick. The Banner of Harganeth is, for my money, point for point, the best magic banner in the game. It is nuts. It gives +1 AP to all combat weapons. That's all it does. What does that mean? Well, if we go back to the actual cold ones, whose page I'm just going to guess at. Oh, it's a couple of pages off. So if we go back to the cold ones, you can see that we've got 3 attacks here. 2 from the Cold One Knight and 1 from the, 1 from the Cold One Knight and 2 from the Cold Ones. So giving them, you know, going from AP 0 Armor Bane 1 on the Cold Ones to AP 1 Armor Bane 1 gives you significantly more punch. Now, that might not be enough in the modern world with parry. So this is a unit that I really like supporting with a Demonology Wizard, giving them +1 strength, attack, and AP on all of their attacks. Absolutely huge. So if we combo Demonic Vessel and Banner of Harganeth, suddenly we've got 3 attacks from the Cold One Knights at strength 5, AP 2, Armor Bane 1. That is going to absolutely eat infantry. And, you know, we've got 2 attacks from the Cold One Knights on top at strength 7, AP 4, Armor Bane 1 as well. Just in case, you know, someone was bringing 2-up armor save infantry, which is hard to do, but I guess technically possible. So, Cold One Knights, absolutely able to eat Death Stars, and that's what they're going to go in the list for. They will lose against other cavalry. They are slow. They are movement 7. They do not have countercharge. You have to really, really outplay your opponent to win the cavalry versus cavalry game. However, they are tank enough to tank a charge, so you might just have to deal with it, except that the Silver Helms are going to hit you, and then you go, okay, now I eat the Silver Helms because you only killed 2 of me, and I have loads of static combat res. Sorry, not static combat res. I have lots of buffs to my output, which means that I'm just going to absolutely eat through that armor. Finally, we've got the Doomfire Warlocks, and these are the worst version of the Wood Elf unit. My brain has turned off. The ones that were spamming Pillar of Fire before Pillar of Fire got nerfed, when they got nerfed. Anyway, so they cast as a bound spell. You cast at power level 1 if you have a unit champion, and you cast at power level 2 if you have a unit champion and your unit strength 10 or more. So this is a unit that wants to be unit strength 10 even though it can't score. So potentially it can be your backup baggage train scoring unit. That's a really strong way to use it. You know, you cast whatever spell you want with it, and then you make sure towards the end of the game you're holding your own objective or your opponent's baggage train. So that's a good use for it there. It has a ward save against non-magical attacks, which is good because it has no other defensive abilities. And other than that, it's just got what you'd expect to see out of an elf fast cav stat line. It's got horses, and the horses are actually strength 4 to be... Sorry, the Doomfire Warlocks themselves are strength 4, which is fine, but they have no other real output, so it doesn't make a difference. Then you've got steeds. They have no rules that you'd want to use them flexibly with, so they don't have anything here that's going to make them good at killing stuff in combat. They don't have first charge or anything like that, so it is very limited in terms of you're picking a spell and then you're going to be casting that spell. And the laws that you get to cast from are dark magic and demonology, which previously is not where we wanted to be, but now I think is quite good. Specifically, the combination I'm talking about here is Battle Lust. Now, Battle Lust is cast on a 9. This unit is casting with power level +2, which is, you know, you only need to roll a 7, but that means about 56% of the time you get the spell off, and that's not great. So already when I'm saying this is a unit that is decent, we've got a lot of failure points built in there, but I think it's worth putting into the list because there is a lot of stuff that I want to put in my Dark Elf lists that really benefit from rerolling hits and having more attacks, specifically Cold Ones, Dragon, Manticore. All of those things really benefit from having the rules here. So we're probably going to be looking at putting one unit of this in. I think at the points cost they are, even if you went minimum, if you went for just units of 5, we're talking, what, 116 points? 116 points for the gimmick is good. I think if we went 100 or, 232 points, I'm starting to worry that we're limiting ourselves too much if we put a second unit in. So one unit of Doomfire Warlocks looks good to me. Other than that, nothing really in here tickles the fancy. It's all just a lot of stuff that is ineffective. Oh, sorry, Blood Rat Medusa, we should talk about. Specifically, it is 85 points for a monster. It doesn't have large targets, so you can kind of, hide it around. It does have close orders, so you have to respect that, unfortunately. But specifically, we're looking at the Stony Stare rule and how that interacts with undead. And I think it's maybe worth putting in if you're worried about undead. So you make a... Oh, sorry, it's not Stony Stare, it's the Petrifying Gaze. So you do some hits in combat that I guess don't count to combat res because it's not when you select it. I'd have to double check when that's done. Honestly, I've not planned to get this thing into combat because it's got 3 attacks with a hand weapon and no other rules. What it does have is the Petrifying Gaze, which is a range 18 shooting attack, strength 2, no AP, but you can't make any armor save against it, and it does multiple wounds D3. This is a weapon... Oh, and don't forget you've got poison attacks. This is a weapon that is okay at killing banshees. It's not great at killing banshees. You're wounding on 5s, but it's okay at killing banshees, and it gives you some extra play against undead. And given that you have poison attacks, if you roll a 6 to hit, you're going to be wounding on 4s into anything. That's okay. Necrosphinxes taking wounds. If you look at the Tomb King monsters, what initiative they have, I think it's very easy to want to put in something that targets initiative. Oh yeah, I should have made that clear. This shooting attack shoots initiative, not toughness, so you can start sniping wounds off big stuff that has poor initiative. So I'm specifically talking about undead and maybe dwarves as well, maybe ogres actually. You'll be wounding on 5s into ogres, but it's multiple wounds D3. I think this is an interesting tech piece that if you've got 85 points left over, you can do worse putting one into your list. And it's just cool to have something a little bit different. So wanted to highlight this as a unit that can do something. It does have Frenzy, which is not great because it's quite a slow model, but it can be baited, especially when you're trying to shoot the enemy with it. But if you're not going to get baited, if you can Frenzy screen yourself effectively, then this is something that will threaten to deal with undead to some degree. Last but certainly not least, let's write a list for this weekend. What am I going to be taking to the TSN Arena? Well, I'm going to be taking Dark Elves because I still want to... I spoke about it a few weeks ago. Now that I'm not going to, play in Mela, I've got a little bit more time to do things with different armies. I would love to win an event with every army. I mean, I'd love that, but that's not realistic. I'm not going to go to that enough event. I'd love to win an event with 4 armies over the course of a calendar year. So when we get to the end and we see the Old World Masters ranking on Old World... I think it's just Old World Rankings is the website. I'd love my top 4 events to be 4 different factions. I think that would just be a fun goal to set. Next year, maybe we go for number 1, but that's definitely not something we're working towards this year. Need to start going to bigger events, which I can travel to more next year. Anyway, by the by, I'm going to write a 2,600 point Dark Elf list and see where that leads us. So one of the restrictions that Rob has got is that he really wants people to be bringing more infantry or bigger units. That was the goal with the 2,600 points, I believe, before the 1.5 changes, and now with 1.5 changes, it's more rewarding to do that. So he's left the characters at 1,000 points. So we haven't actually got 1,300 points to spend here, only 1,000 points. So when we get down to 300, that is our cap. And I'm going to start off with a Dreadlord, I'm going to start off with a Beastmaster, and I'm going to go with a Supreme Sorceress as well. Now, I'm a little limited by the models in my collection, and I've been thinking about this style of list, so I know roughly what I'm putting in anyway. So let's just sketch out what we're going to be. We're going to be mounted on a cold one for the Sorceress. We're going to be mounted on a Manticore for the High Beastmaster, and I have got, just off camera here, I started painting earlier. It is very early in the process, but you know, we've got a Manticore, the Chaos Manticore, in fact, the only Manticore that Games Workshop sells, and I've got the Shire Vest, actually, is what I'm using as my Beastmaster. I've done some conversion. I'll maybe put some pictures up because I think you're going to struggle to see it. But basically, I've taken the Shire Vest model and just put a couple of regular Dark Elf pieces on to make it look more Dark Elfy, and that's going to be my Beastmaster on the base of the Manticore. Yeah, I'll if I remember, I'll put some pictures up there because I think I'm actually relatively happy with those conversions. The Dreadlord, of course, is going to be on a black dragon with a full plate and a shield. And then I like great weapons, but I think I'm going to go and see if I can fit a magic weapon in here first. Given that it's Renegades, your murderous rule, where you're rerolling wounds with hand weapons, now applies to all non-magical weapons. So there is a reason to take a great weapon here, but I think I'm still going to go like a MR2 spell Eater Axe. Beastmaster, this one is nice and easy. We're going to go heavy armor. We're going to give it the... where's it gone? Talisman of Protection and the Shield of Grond. Nice and easy there. That just gives us the defensive profile that we want to have, -1 to wound. And in, you know, Renegades, we are getting +2 to our toughness. So this is going to be actually as tanky as a dragon in terms of... It's only got 7 wounds, but it'll be a toughness 6 equivalent. I will give it a cavalry spear. I would love to give it a magic weapon, but only 75 points of magic items, and there's no wriggle room there. So we're just going to have to deal with the fact we've got a cavalry spear. And I think this unit gets the Sea Dragon Cloak to get us to a 3-up armor save against non-magical shooting. It's vaguely worth having. Sure. So the Dreadlord, let's give the Dreadlord the Pendant of Caleth, which is the ward save item that we were talking about previously. We'll put a Spell Eater Axe on there as well, make it the general. And I think that probably is going to load this character up with everything it needs. I've got a shield. Yeah, nice and easy there. Supreme Sorceress will go... We don't need to go level 4 because we're going to take a Lore Familiar. We are going to take Demonology. We're going to go... What do we give this model? Lore Familiar, Power Scroll, because it's important to get the spell off. I think that might be it. I don't think we've got points for anything else. Yeah, 3 or 5, so I've got 5 points left. I could give it a Burning Blade, just to give it some magical attacks in case I come up against Ethereal. I don't hate that. We'll put that on. I might take it off. I mean, I could just pick an Assailment spell, actually. Demonology has an okay Assailment spell, if I remember correctly. Demonic Familiars. Yeah, this will absolutely mince Ethereal units if it goes off, so we can just take that and not worry too much. Okay, so 1,000 points in character spent, but we still have 1,600 points left to put in. Now, where do we want to start? I like units of 6 with the Cavalry Spear, Repeater Crossbows, and Shields. What does it look like if we just go 4 units of those? Because I do have 24 Dark Riders. I worry, actually, that this is going to leave me too vulnerable to being shot off the board and not being able to hold anything with these units. So let's go 8, 8, 8, and we'll go 2 units can have Fire and Flee. It's 0 to 1 per 1,000, and we'll give 1 unit Scouts as well. I don't think both units need Scouts. This is literally just my Green Knight protection tech. Yeah, I think that's good. And then I've got a load of Repeater Crossbowmen, and I think 14 is going to be the way to do things. I'll start off with command, but I could take the command off, and we'll put the shields on as well, so we'll see how that spans out in terms of points. Cool. Okay, rare units, we're going to go for 1 unit of Doomfire Warlocks. I'm going to go 6, just so I don't want to take a single wound and suddenly be casting at power level +1. That would just suck. So this unit, they're going to be picking specifically Battle Lust and buffing up some Cold One Knights. Speaking of, let's put those Cold One Knights in. So if I go, I guess, 8 and 7, I'll go full command. I want to put 2 units in. I think 2 units is going to work out well. And 1 unit can be unsupported with the Banner of Harganeth. And I'll also give them Charmed Shield and double Obsidian Lodestone. And then the second unit... oh, sorry. I put it on... This is, okay, so this is the unsupported unit. And then the Supreme Sorceress can go into this unit. So both unit get, like, extra punch in terms of Demonic Vessel, giving them AP. And so on and so forth. Or I can just double up if I need to really kill a unit. I think this unit that isn't going to have the Banner of Harganeth can go for a Rampaging Banner. That just feels solid. And we'll give it double Obsidian Lodestone as well. And a Charm Shield. I do just like Charm Shields on my unit champions. Especially something as tanky as this. With a 2-up save, this could theoretically just not die to a dragon if I roll well enough. Okay. So that puts us 7... Okay, 117 points over. Okie dokie. How do we want to fix this? I don't really want to drop much in terms of the core. I think I want to leave the core as it stands. And yeah, okay. What do we need to drop? So if we're 117 points over, let's drop a Cold One Knight from each unit, because 2 units of 7 I think is still pretty decent. That leaves us at 45 points over. I can drop the Charmed Shields. They're nice to have, but they're not the be-all, end-all. No, we'll leave those in, the Obsidian Lodestones. We are 37 points over, so if I drop 1 Dark Rider from the squad that doesn't have Fire and Flee, that also makes it easier to visually represent which unit's which, actually. So that's... Then we're 18 points over. Oh, I should just take out the command here. I don't think I need command on the repeater crossbows. Having a unit champion is probably important, actually. I think I'd like to have unit champions in there, which means I need to shave 8 points somewhere. Where on earth do I shave 8 points from? So the dragon, full plate shield, dragon, pendant Kaelith, spell axe, that's fine. Cav spear, heavy armor, sea dragon cloak, manticore, talisman protection, shield of Grond, not much to change there. Wizard, lore familiar, power scroll, demonology. This is as cheap as it can go. I could downgrade to a Dark Steed. That would save me 4 points. It would lose me a couple of attacks on the Cold One. It would lose me 2 unit strength for fear. I think I like having it on the Cold One. And the model I have is on a Cold One as well, actually. So that does make a difference. It might just be drop one of these. I don't really want to drop down to 13. But, you know, needs must. Needs must. I definitely don't want to drop the unit champions on the musicians here. What if we just go down to 6? Oh, that doesn't feel good either. These are the last tweaks that you make in a list where you can spend hours or days just tweaking away. I think I'm going to cut the video here because I will probably look at this for another 2 hours. Just like while I'm building and painting, I'll be thinking about the last efficiency tweak. But yeah, for now, that's going to do. And I think the list will look roughly like this. 22 to 23-ish Dark Riders, 28 Repeater Crossbowmen, 13 Cold One Knights, 1 unit of Doomfire Warlocks, and then 3 characters, of which 2 are unridden monsters and 1 is on a Cold One. Yeah, I'm happy with that, and I'm gonna tweak it and submit it and go from there. Hopefully, see you this weekend. Thank you for watching. Thank you for getting to the end of the video. If you've reached this point and you haven't already, I would really appreciate a like, a comment, a subscription if you haven't done those things. It just helps me get seen by more people, boost me up in the algorithm, all of the stuff that the YouTubers do like to say. If you would like to support me in my goal to become a full-time YouTuber, I would absolutely appreciate that. You can become a member below. There are various perks to those, name at the end of the videos, all that good stuff, but it also unlocks some VIP areas in Discord if you become a Longbeard or Ground Knight tier supporter. Those VIP sections are the only parts that are locked away in Discord. You don't have to be a member to join the Discord. I'd recommend that you should. We've got about 450, 500 people on there. It's a great place for discussion, a lot of fun. I do try and chime in as much as possible. And it's also where the Fix My List show lists are put, and also if you are one of the Ground Knight or Longbeard tier supporters, where you participate in choosing which list I play in the monthly Pick My List series.